reporting here today to our headquarters here in Jacksonville, Florida. This is actually one of 10 locations that Redwire has across the United States, and we're very, very proud to be leaders in in-space manufacturing, power generation, robotics, and 3D printing. Thank you all that accompanied us on the tour, and now I'll turn it over to Pete Canito, our Chairman and CEO, to say a few words.
Thanks, Andrew. Today we're honored to be hosting NASA Administrator Bill Nelson for a tour of our facility. You obviously saw some amazing technology that you were very familiar with. You did a better job explaining it than I do, so I took some notes. And of course, what a wonderful opportunity to meet some of our fantastic employees that we're really privileged to have here at Redwire. Redwire is proud to have supported more than 180 missions across our solar system, including solar probes visiting the sun and deep space missions to Pluto and beyond. We're very excited about our support to the upcoming NASA Artemis program. Very proud to be a part of that. And of course, during the tour, we highlighted our in-space servicing, assembling, and manufacturing capability called Archinaut, and the robotic labs that will lead to a number of different innovations, not only in in-space assembly, but also mitigating orbital debris, which is something we're very focused on in the space community. So that's great for us. In addition to that, I'm really pleased to introduce NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Administrator Nelson really needs no introduction to this crowd, but he served in public office for over 4 decades, first in the state legislature, U.S. Congress, and then state treasurer, and he was elected 3 times to the U.S. Senate, representing Florida for 18 years. So without any further ado, sir.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you all. Well, I want to tell you, when I first came to Jacksonville, not the first time, but a momentous time, 51 years ago, and I'll tell you why. But of course, I could have never believed this. First of all, I would have never believed that I would be having the privilege of heading up NASA. Jacksonville has become a center of space technology because of stuff that you have just seen. Now, I came 51 years ago happily for the reason that my college roommate, who I introduced you to, Bruce Smathers, introduced me to my wife, a Jacksonville girl. I then returned the favor and introduced him to his wife. And so I have been, as a second home to me, Jacksonville, all those 51 years since I met Grace, and the 50 years plus that we have now been married. And of course, I could have never believed that we are developing technology in Jacksonville that is going to be out in space and is going to be manufacturing with 3D machines these huge structures that'll be satellites, it could be telescopes, it could be rigid beams for transporting things back and forth across the beam. It could be so many different things. And the reason that this is revolutionary is there's only so much that you can get off the Earth when you have to defy the force of gravity. We're building bigger and bigger rockets, but on the kind of structures that we're going to have in space, on the moon, and as we prepare and learn on the moon then to take humans to Mars, those are going to be larger and larger structures. And so what you have just seen in this tour is a demonstration of the beginning of this, and it's all happening right now. At the same time, this August, we're going back to the moon, and it's been a half a century. This time we're going back to stay for a while. We're going to learn how to live there, we're going to learn how to build things there, we're going to learn how to keep humans alive in that hostile environment for long periods of time. We're going to learn for example, how to protect ourselves from the radiation from the sun when there is a solar explosion. We're not affected here that much lethally on Earth because we have a magnetic field around the Earth, and that repels that radiation. On the moon, that's not the case. On Mars, that's not the case. Going between here and the moon or between Earth and Mars, that's not the case. So we're going to have to learn how to protect ourselves as well. And then we're going to have to learn how to grow things. Down at the Kennedy Space Center, we are developing plants that are growing in the kind of environment that you would have on a spacecraft. Because you go to Mars, right now with conventional technology, it'll take you about 8 months to get there. Once you get there, you're going to have to stay at least a year, maybe 2 years, for the planets to realign so that Earth and Mars are close enough so that you could get back in 8 months. We don't have enough capability of taking all the food that we need on one mission. We may have to send several cargo missions, but eventually what we want to do is to be able to grow our own food on Mars, on the moon, on whatever is the climate that is going to house humans out in space. So this is an exciting time. It's an exciting time for Jacksonville. It is certainly an exciting time for NASA. And need I remind you, we've got a rover on Mars right now, and we launched a little helicopter, and that little helicopter is still flying, and that is an atmosphere that is 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. That helicopter is able to fly in that least dense kind of atmosphere. Final comment, in 2 months, you're going to get the first pictures of the beginning of the universe. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. The James Webb Space Telescope that is now sitting 1 million miles from Earth, on the other side of Earth from the sun, looking out into the darkness of space, it will collect infrared light that has been traveling at 186,000 miles per second for 13.5 billion years. That is how big the universe is, and it is expanding. And that light was emitted right after the beginning, in the formation of the first galaxy. And now, you know, we know our galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, hundreds of billions of stars, and then there are hundreds of billions of galaxies with each hundreds of billions of stars. So this is an exciting time. Exciting time to be a part of our space program. It's an exciting time to be alive. All right, John, you want to say something before we take questions?
Sure.
John Grunsville, a NASA astronaut, 5-time space flyer.
And I was the Associate Administrator for Science for a number of years and worked with then Senator Nelson on great things like the Perseverance rover and the Ingenuity helicopter and the James Webb Space Telescope. And all of those things were made by humans, made by engineers and technicians and scientists. Humans are makers. That's what we do. You know, all of your cameras, you know, somebody had to invent that and make it. And so I'm absolutely convinced that as we have the capability in space to 3D print, to additively manufacture in plastics, in metal, in lunar regolith, people are going to invent new things that we just have no idea were even possible. And I think that's going to be really exciting about space. I never imagined I would come to Jacksonville and see a big space company. I've spent a lot of time in Florida. I've launched from Florida 5 times into space. And to see what's going on here in Jax is pretty impressive. And I think it's just a sign of the times that companies like Redwire, which aren't just in Jacksonville, they're across the country now. These new space companies are incredibly innovative. And folks like Administrator Nelson are using NASA's expertise to help these companies to achieve new things. And I think we're going to see some pretty amazing stuff in the next decade. And from James Webb Space Telescope, I think in the next 10 years, we're going to be looking at a planet around a nearby star and start to see that, hey, there's other places like our solar system out there, and that's going to be pretty exciting. So, thank you.
And we constantly look for life out there also, and then we look how to protect the Earth, not only from the standpoint of climate, and we're the guys that measure what's happening to the climate, by the way. All those things up there, measuring it, we designed it, built it, launched it, and most of them we operate. But we're going to be doing some incredible things in the future. So it's Katie bar the door. So let's have your questions.
Just say your name and who you're with.
Sure. One of the items that we saw on the tour today were components and parts of the OSAM mission, which was, as was noted during the tour, created and funded through a tipping point contract, which I believe is in its 5th year of awarding. Can you just talk about the importance of a program like that that sort of splits the cost between industry and NASA to be able to prove out these types of technologies and why that's an important use of funds?
Absolutely. OSAM is on orbit servicing and manufacturing. And what you've done is you have seen the manufacturing part today. Servicing is, what about a defunct satellite? Go up and fix it. Or it's run out of fuel. Go up and refuel it. So it's a whole new era in space. Now, the thrust of the question is, did the government need to do all of this? Well, we figured no. What we needed to do, and yours truly passed the bill a dozen years ago that set us off on this course, a government course and a parallel course of a commercial course. And it's a public-private partnership. And so just like the landers that I told you about that are going to be landing on the moon later this year and next year, private investment with incentive, seed money from NASA to do this. And then you will see commercial markets as a result of these new technologies. You'll start to see a space industry that is coming off the surface of the Earth and is going out into space. The International Space Station that we have up there, we're going to extend it to 2030. That's only 8 more years. At the end of that, we're going to deorbit that aging space station and we're going to have it replaced with commercial space stations. So NASA doesn't have to do the space station. We can rent space or lease space on a commercial space station, or where we train astronauts in space before we then send them out to the moon. We can rent that space. It's greater bang for the buck for the United States government tax dollar, and that's what public-private partnerships have demonstrated to be.
Senator Nelson, Jake Stofan with Action News Jax. This is kind of a question for all of you guys. I've heard you all mention, I never would have thought Jacksonville would be home to a leading space manufacturing business. First of all, what made Redwire want to move to Jacksonville? What made Jacksonville an attractive location? And how far do you see this going? I mean, is Jacksonville looking at becoming a new hub, kind of like Kennedy Space Center?
So, yeah, sure. I'll start out answering the first question. So, interestingly enough, one of those private partners that the administrator mentioned is a private equity company called AE Industrial out of Boca Raton, Florida. So, Florida has a long history of space, and we're very proud of that. So, in that regard, it's no surprise that Jacksonville would be somewhere we would want to put our headquarters. Now, when we started building Redwire out, if you were on the tour, you heard something mentioned called an SBIR, a Small Business Innovation and Research Award out of NASA. This is a really important program that NASA and other government agencies have to stimulate small business investments. And we've been able to build off of those SBIRs to create all the different great technologies here and take it to the next level with that private investment. So it started here with some seed funding through the SBIR program, and ultimately started growing here in Jacksonville in what you see today. And then we recognized that there's a great community here in Jacksonville that has the technical expertise and the educational foundation to offer great employees for Jacksonville, including Jacksonville's own, our president and COO, Andrew Rush. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would say to your question about why Jacksonville, this is a great place to live. It's we have an NFL football team which we constantly root for. We have a wonderful beach. We have a wonderful river. We have great schools. The community is really amazing. The university system here is really amazing. From an aerospace perspective, you know, we're equidistant between Embry-Riddle and Georgia Tech, two amazing schools. So this is really a great place to build a company, to have employees of you know, in every walk of life be here, whether they're early career just starting out, or you know, or starting a family, or you know, or at the pinnacles of their career. Jacksonville is really just we found to be a really wonderful place for employees, and the business climate, you know, traditionally has been very, very positive for us as well.
Hi, Julian with the Jacksonville Business Journal. I have a question for Administrator Nelson. I was just wondering if you could say a word about if there were a couple things that you were looking for above all in this tour, and what do you think is going to stick with you now that you've done it?
This is my second visit here, and a year ago I came. They've made substantial progress here. And as you heard on the tour, they're going to launch next year. So it's getting to be real. And this is the kind of progress that we need, and it's what we find in our public-private partnerships is that they are often quicker to produce than just a legacy government program. And yet you need that legacy government program to give the substantial foundation for all of the public-private partnerships as well. So it's a combination of both. By the way, Action News, my wife's Jacksonville girl, uncle started your station. Started one of your two stations. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I got one.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to know what you saw today that gave you hope for the orbital debris problem that we have that was mentioned quite a few times. What did you see today that gave you hope?
Well, you saw that robot that was capturing that particular thing. We don't know what, save for Mother Nature, is going to take care of the orbital debris problem. Human incompetence and human arrogance has caused the debris problem. Incompetence because when you put something up, you don't make arrangements for it to come back and burn up in the atmosphere. Human arrogance because they put something up and they don't care, as the Chinese and the Russians have done. Chinese in 2007, when they did an ASAT test, an anti-satellite test, blow up a satellite, it blasted it to smithereens, tens of thousands of pieces of space junk, and it's in the elevations where we have a lot of our satellites, indeed in the elevation where we have our International Space Station. And then what was unbelievable, our partners on the space station, the Russians, different group, the Russian military, last year they did an ASAT, blew up a defunct satellite, and they've got a Russian crew of cosmonauts on orbit that they had to actually maneuver the space station in order to get it out of the way of some of the space debris that they had caused with that military anti-satellite test. Now we're putting up constellations, communications, that are thousands of satellites. And so you just wouldn't believe, if you'll just Google it and go look at the picture of Earth and look at all of not only the debris but satellites that are hovering and orbiting around the Earth. And sooner or later, we're going to have an accident. So the question is, how are we going to get rid of this stuff? Well, if it stays up there long enough, Earth's gravity will eventually pull it down. And once it gets into the atmosphere, it'll burn up on re-entry. But a lot of that stuff is up there, and it's going to be years and years before it's going to come down. And so we don't know what we're doing, but we're going to try to learn. Maybe it's something to go and grab something and start pulling it down. Maybe it's to grab it and to take it to a higher orbit, like a cemetery orbit, that gets out of the way of our low Earth orbit and medium Earth orbit, indeed even 23,000 miles out, that orbit that we have a lot of satellites out there. We don't know. But the research that's being done here that you saw is clearly important research.
Mr. Nelson,
Yes.
and for the folks from Redwire as well, you know, just over a week we're going to see Boeing fly its Starliner up to the space station for OFT2. For Administrator Nelson, you know, can you just talk about the significance of, you know, reaching this milestone with the other commercial crew partner, and then for Redwire, you know, obviously you fly a lot of missions using Crew Dragon. Can you just talk about what you're anticipating with having another commercial partner? Oh, sorry. With having another commercial partner be in the commercial resupply mission rotation for you guys. Thanks.
So your first question was about another commercial opportunity to get to space for human beings. As a result of that legislation that Senator Kay Bailey Hutchinson and I passed in 2010, it set us off on this commercial part. And as part of that, we said we're going to find a way to space for both cargo and crew, astronauts, that's going to be other than government rockets. That has matured over the last dozen years to the point that you see SpaceX is flying frequently crew to the International Space Station, and soon to be joined by Boeing, which has been delayed for 2 years. This first test mission of Boeing will fly, it's the second test mission. It will fly in a matter of the next week or two. Just think if we did not have a way to get to our own space station and we're reliant on the Russians as we were as good partners after we shut down the space shuttle. Just think, under these circumstances where Putin, in his adventurism with this horrible war in Ukraine, just imagine if we didn't have that capability. Well, fortunately we do, and it's as a result of a public-private partnership.
So I'll add from a Redwire perspective, we have two sayings here at Redwire that we like to use a lot. One is when space wins, Redwire wins. And that's because we understand that where we are as an industry, especially on the commercial side of space, there's a lot of room for all of these different great companies to come and participate and build an economy in space, build off of all the incredible stuff that NASA has done in establishing the science of space, but really make it a place where a full space economy can thrive. And that's really important to us. Launch companies and the capability to get space infrastructure, which is what Redwire is, a space infrastructure company, into space is really important, and Boeing's a great partner with us on that. The other thing we like to say here at Redwire is space is a team sport. And the rocket companies are absolutely critical and have been for the last decade in driving down the cost of launch. And that is a huge demand indicator for in-space infrastructure and one of the foundations of the future of the space economy. So we're really excited about every commercial entity that generates a new way to put value-added, responsible, sustainable space infrastructure in orbit, because we have a lot of different products that are going to be foundational to that future space economy. We talked about, Administrator Nelson talked about plant growth. Redwire is involved in the development of the plant sciences. We're manufacturing things for commercial entities, not just for the government. And these future commercial space stations are not only going to be about research and science and technology in support of the government, but they're also going to be generating products. And we have a pipeline of commercial products that we anticipate that we will be generating on these commercial space station, and the Boeing Starliner capability will be a key part of that logistics infrastructure to enable our future business model. Andrew, you want anything you want to add?
I was going to say, and who knows, as we build out this infrastructure and do manufacturing in space, one day we might have a Redwire astronaut corps with folks like John that will go up there and operate the hardware.
I think he's lobbying for
I
that
think he
slot.
is.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're done with the Q&A for now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, John. Thank you. This is terrific. Yes, sir. Just terrific. Next time I come back, show me all your...
Well, we can